30 according to my automation, just so you know. But we'll be kind and mind our P's and Q's anyway, right?
Well, we're such a boisterous group. I mean,
Yeah, there's so much chatter going on right now. Well, welcome
good morning,
everybody.
John.
Morning.
Yeah,
You're looking good as usual with your tie and your nice collared shirt.
and the YouTube stream is running. Let me just check on the Facebook stream. Well, I will investigate Facebook in a moment. But welcome everybody to Downey Center for Spiritual Living and joining us this morning for our Sunday celebration. Welcome to those who have joined us on Zoom, and welcome to those who are looking at our live streams, however those might be occurring. And as our custom, we like to begin in song, and I will share that. Then mute your mics and sing out loud. During the families of the fall, whose loved ones were found Thursday as suicide blasts outside the Kabul airport. Then were Marines, an army soldier, and Navy sailor. U.S. Corporal Kareem McCoy, Navy Corpsman Maxton Soviet, Marine Lance Corporal Riley McCullough, Marine Lance Corporal Jared Schmitz, Marine Corporal Hunter Lopez, Army Staff Sergeant Ryan House, Marine Lance Corporal Dylan Morola, Sergeant Taylor.
Step into the light, step into the love, step into the truth of who you are. Step into the light, step into the love, step into the truth of who you are. Step into the light, step into the love, step into the truth of who you are. Step into the light, step into the love, step into the truth of who you are. Step into the light, you are beautiful, just the way you are. Step into the love, you're illuminated by the glory of God's love. Step into the truth, from within your abundance overflows. How love can change one life can change the world. Step into the light, step into the love, step into the truth of who you are. Step into the light, step into the love, step into the truth of who you are. Step into the light, step into the love, step into the truth of who you are. Step into the light, step into the love, step into the truth of who you are. I am the light of the world. You are the light of the world. We are the light of the world. So move with me, step with me, step into the light, step into the love, step into the truth of who you are. Step into the light, step into the love, step into the truth of who you are. Step into the light, step into the love, step into the truth of who you are. Step into the light, step into the love, step into the truth of who you are. I am the light of the world. You are the light of the world. We are the light of the world. So move with me, step with me, step into the light.
Good morning, everybody. I hope you had a good sing-along. Yeah? Well, welcome again to Downey Center for Spiritual Living. I'm so glad you've all joined us here this morning. And we like to get right into that flow by singing. And at this point, I want to remind ourselves of our vision and mission. So just to read this down, to look at it with fresh eyes, for the first time today, most of us are looking at this vision and mission for this beloved community. And so I just want to read this out loud to you first, and then I encourage you to unmute, and we will say it all together out loud. And then just notice how this resonates with you. By valuing and empowering all, we inspire a fulfilling and joyous life. Al valorar y potenciar todo, inspiramos una vida plena y alegre. So let's say that all together. Here we go. By valuing and empowering all, we inspire a fulfilling and joyous life. Al valorar y potenciar todo, inspiramos una vida plena y alegre. So how did that feel for folks this morning? And feel free just to say hello to our community as you've all joined us here this morning. Did anybody catch anything in particular as we were either listening to that or reading it or saying it out loud? Did you hear something in your ears that was maybe a little new for you or maybe shifting a little bit for you? All right, so I think we're filled and fulfilled with knowing our vision and mission this morning. And we continue in spiritual practice today, and we're blessed with a practitioner who shared a magnificent message with us last week. Thank you again, Gary. And Gary Takasian is a longtime devotee of the Science of Mind teaching. He lives these principles, and he exhibits how much that has, made him the loving being, the compassionate being that he is today. So I invite us all just to drink in this practice with practitioner Gary Takasian.
Good morning. And I just invite us now to just spend a few moments in meditation. And this month we have been in this venture of being in the pause for guidance. And as we've gone through all the various topics, this week we are looking at the idea of arising once again. And so for this morning, what I would like us to do is to think back to that mountain meditation, the one that we've done a number of times. I am the mountain, the sky is my mind, and the clouds are my thoughts passing by. And as we sit on that mountain on this time, thinking about this idea of arising once again, I just invite us all to just be there at just the crack of dawn, just at the time that the sun is rising, and we see that beautiful pink and orange colors in the sky. And as that sun arises, within us also our spirits arise, and we once again emerge and re-emerge from our time of pause beholding the entire glory of that which is spirit, that which is divine, that which is within each and every one of us. And so, for a few moments, let us just bathe in that beauty, in that space, knowing that we have come out of our time of pause and that we are re-emerging into that consciousness that we know as that which we share with the divine. For it is within us that we create each and every one of these moments, and we allow ourselves to just simply be right now in that space. And as we come back from that gentle time, that time and place where we know that we are with the divine, what I am knowing this morning is that we really celebrate that we are surrounded by this amazing, this power, this presence, this divine mind that just gives us all that we have. And this morning, I just know that that is available to each and every one of us. That each one of those things which we bring to this morning comes to play in that creativity that is from divine. And so what I know this morning is, even as I am speaking now, Reverend Kevin will be speaking to us and will be bringing the message of the day. And that will be along with this same theme of emergence from this time of pause. And so right now, I just give thanks for knowing that, for knowing these truths, and just simply allow now those words to be released into the creative law. And so I say, and so it is, and now it is. Amen.
Mhm. Well, thank you so much, Gary. Really beautifully done. Let's show Gary some love. Hmm. It was just what I needed in this moment. Thank you so much. I appreciate it and appreciate you. Hmm. And with that, I will share just a couple of announcements with you today. As usual, practitioner Jan Hartman is continuing her Prac Chat series. They meet Thursdays at 8:30 a.m. Pacific time. Her next meeting, oh, I didn't correct the date, will be September, let me work this out. I think it's September 2nd or 3rd. But this coming Thursday for sure at 8:30 a.m. Pacific time, she will be facilitating Prac Chat. And there's a special link for that. You'll find that link in the weekly emails and also on the website. So join Prac Chat with Jan Hartman at that time. And of course, if you're called to serve in our community in any way, we have many opportunities, many ways in which you can be of service to our community. So just reach out to anyone in our leadership teams, whether it's our practitioners or ministers or leadership council, and we will gladly fulfill your call to be of service to our community. And we want to let you know about an upcoming class. Class is being facilitated by Reverend Judy Osuna. It is called Change Happens. It is meeting via Zoom from 6 to 8:30 p.m. Pacific time. It's going to begin September 13th and runs through November 1st. The investment, as she puts it, is $100 for 8 weeks of possibilities through change. I love that. And you can register by clicking on the links in the emails or on the website, or just emailing us at downeycsl@gmail.com, or even give us a call at the church phone number, and we will gladly reserve your seat. And as Reverend Judy says, register today because space is unlimited. I love that. And I do want to thank all those people that help put this together and bring this to you each week. So thanks to our practitioner of the day, Gary Takasian, for that wonderful meditation and invocation. Appreciate you, and also for last week's message. And I don't know who this guy is giving the message today, but we'll give thanks anyway. And to those folks that are out participating in and moderating our live streams on Facebook and YouTube, thanks to you for doing that. And to our leadership council, who are continuing to work behind the scenes to move our center forward into that next that version of itself. And to our music team, obviously the first song we sang is one of their new creations, so thanks to them for continuing that creative process and continue to support us through song. And thanks to all of you for joining us here today. Appreciate you all being here. I can feel it through the Zoom, and I can feel it through the streams. But anyway, thank you all for being here. Appreciate you. And we move back into spiritual practice. We didn't leave it for long, did we? We'll have to figure out a way to make announcements part of our spiritual practice. But gratitude is part of our spiritual practice. And giving can be a spiritual practice. Now, the ways in which you can give: you can mail a check to our street address at 10,000 Paramount Boulevard in Downey, California, 90240. Or you can use your bill pay service through your bank. That's what I'm choosing to do these days. Or use the donate button or link, and I'll put that up in the chat in a moment. And that way you can use a credit card or a debit card to give. And giving rises to the level of a spiritual practice based on the consciousness with which you give. And by consciousness, it's a mental attitude as well as a feeling, what you're feeling inwardly about your giving. And to feel good about giving is to make that a conscious act, a conscious practice, right? So this is why giving can become a spiritual practice. Whether you're donating to our Center for Spiritual Living, whether you're donating to something that also feeds you spiritually, whether you're donating by way of charity, or even if you're just paying at the checkout in a store, or paying your rent, or paying your bill. Those are all forms of circulating God's good. And then for me, it's like to more consciously participate in that circulation, in that flow, to be consciously giving of myself. And I'm really not giving of myself, I'm just giving through me. So that feeling of generosity, that feeling of being a conduit for good, that feeling of being abundant beyond what I can even imagine. These are all feelings to be prosperous in a giving way. So I invite you to hold your hands over your heart as we say our statement of giving together. And we say it simultaneously in English and in Spanish. I'm going to say it in English. You're welcome to choose which language works best for you. But here we go. And you can unmute for this too, so we can all hear each other. Abundance flows in my life. I am blessed with prosperity. I give with generosity. Yes, I tithe on faith, belief, and with a consciousness of love. My gift is a divine circulation through me that now benefits and grows our spiritual community and beyond. And now it is.
Divina a través de que ahora.
Wow, that sounded wonderful. And so now we move back into song, and I just invite you to use this song, whether you sing with it or just listen to it, to prepare your hearts and minds for the message. So just listen and prepare.
I'm walking in the Spirit, walking in the Spirit, walking in the Spirit of one God, loving in the Spirit, loving in the Spirit, loving in the Spirit of one God, moving in the Spirit. Oh, I'm moving in the Spirit. Oh, the Spirit. Oh, God. Growing in the Spirit. Every day I'm growing in the Spirit. Growing in the Spirit. The Spirit of God.
Thank you for indulging me in that pause. Part of it was me spinning some plates, and part of it was just drinking in the spirit, breathing in the spirit. Thank you again. Welcome again to Downey Center for Spiritual Living. Now, I wanted to begin my message with a pop quiz, and that is, why are we here today? Raise your hands if you know. But as I often say, we are here to feel better. Now, feeling better might mean that some wound, some hurt is healing, and that is part of feeling better. But feeling better also might mean that, that some good that is already happening in your life is expanding. Something that is circulating in your life is improving in some way. You might be taking that spiritual success and feeling and applying that good feeling to some other area of your life. So you might have, success in your career, and you're transforming, moving that success, utilizing what you've learned about that success, especially the feeling of that success, and applying it to another aspect of your life, maybe your creative fulfillment, or maybe relationships, or maybe your spiritual study. But just understand that my perspective is that I'm here in this process, in this community, to feel better. And I trust that you're here to feel the same. So, as Gary alluded to in the in the spiritual practices this morning, we are following along with a series of themes that have been evolved and developed by a group of people at the denomination at Centers for Spiritual Living. And the annual theme for 2021 is Timeless Wisdom, Evolutionary Vision. And the theme for the month of August, and we have 5 Sundays in August, so we get 5 themes, is for the month is a pause for guidance. And for today, as Gary mentioned, it is rise and re-emerge. So the context for the monthly theme is an invitation for you to pause for guidance, for rest, for rejuvenation, in order to prepare for that next leg of your spiritual journey. And what the folks came up with in developing these themes is that you welcome joy and innovation and authenticity and vulnerability and the opportunity to evolve your thinking. And then today's message was prepared by Marie Kirkland at the Living Aligned Virtual Ministry. And what she is bringing to this message is an invitation to rise and reemerge through restoration, integration, self-care, and evolution. Now, in this human phase of your soul's journey, you are not a perpetual motion mechanism, right? For you to be your best and to share your gifts, you must, in some form or fashion, become an expert at self-care. I mean, you must consciously pay attention to what feeds you, what restores you, what rejuvenates you, what reinvigorates you, in order for you to keep propelling yourself along this transformational phase of your soul's journey. The evolutionary vision piece is something that the CSL has what we call a global vision, an overarching vision for our organization. And so that vision is that you see a world in which each and every person lives in alignment with spiritual principle, a world in which individually and collectively, you and I, we are called to a higher state of consciousness and act with that higher state of consciousness. So that is something that guides our lives, that it is a collective and individual rising up and uplifting. In the timeless wisdom, this talks about what we have gleaned from the ancients, and that is this self-awareness, so much so that one takes that care for themselves in order to be a more God-filled presence in this plane. And that means that you and I become more conscious of our motivations, of that inner dialogue. We bring to conscious awareness any hidden beliefs. It is to observe and take responsibility for those choices that you make, those choices that you're making internally and how they might have an effect on the world around you. And with this kind of self-awareness, you're more able to make, productive, compassionate, conscious choices. So we have this quote from Ernest Holmes that says, the first step for you to take involves becoming aware that you already have the God qualities you wish to cultivate and experience in everyday life. You already have what it is you want. So let's just take rise and re-emerge as the two key words of our theme today. So the question becomes, from what are you rising? Are you arising out of some kind of challenge? Or are you arising out of some sort of success? Are you arising from a dormancy that is accidental or intentional? Did you kind of proverbially fall asleep at the wheel, or did you intentionally lie down and take a break? And then, is this shift or change in your life condition, is this something that's deteriorating in your life? Maybe some of those stable structures that are by design crumbling in order to be rebuilt? Or are you maintaining something that's already good? Or is something improving? Is something growing in consciousness and good in your life? And is this a passing fancy? Is it a momentary experience, or is it something more gradual? And then the question becomes, to what are you rising? Did you just accidentally sort of catch that updraft? And is this really an upward rising? Or are you consciously, intentionally realizing, manifesting, demonstrating something better in your life? And then emerge or re-emerge. Well, emerge means come into view. So to re-emerge means you're not in view, right? So from what are you emerging? Were you ever out of view? Maybe you always considered yourself to be on that, that level of conscious awareness, at least so much as your waking thinking might allow. Or were you somehow out of view? Did you feel cast aside by something or someone? Or did you deliberately take yourself out of view? So to what are you emerging? What's coming back into view? What are you embracing? Is there some new dimension of consciousness that is seeking to come into your world of experience and expression. So Wayne Dyer says, in every moment of your life, you have the option to choose peace for yourself. In every moment of your life, you have the option to choose peace for yourself. So that might be something that you choose to emerge into, to rise into. And I came across this. I was reading a story that dates back to March of this year about a woman named Renee Montgomery, who is now the co-owner of the WNBA team called the Atlanta Dream. And in response to an interview she gave about what is a fairly challenging but successful process for her, she said, moments equal momentum. And this is a fairly common phrase used around the business and life coaching world. And I like to use my variation on this. Says moments create momentum. Moments create momentum. And so we often talk about this in the context of, you guessed it, spiritual practices, right? So spiritual practice is a way of creating those moments. And you're doing this consciously and intentionally. And as Wayne Dyer would say, part of that conscious, intentional practice is to choose peace or choose some other quality in your life that you're either wanting to expand on the good of that, or maybe bring it into an expression, an experience that you haven't had in the past. And so there are a number of spiritual practices. Every day, you might do some form of meditation, some form of treatment or affirmative prayer, or just affirmation. You might do some form of spiritual study or reading. You might journal as a spiritual practice. And as I encourage people to do, is vision on a daily basis. Simply ask, what is God's highest idea for this moment, right? For this day, for this week, for this life? And how does that feel? What's the quality of that vision? And that's something you can do, like for me, often many times throughout the day. And particularly if I'm challenged around something, right? That's a sign that I'm sort of out of sorts. And what gets me back on track real easily is just take a moment or two and say, what's the God idea here? What's the good idea here? Oh, okay, that's it. That's the feeling I want to cultivate. And then on a weekly basis, you might participate in sacred service. You might see your practitioner for spiritual counseling. As we've done today, we have given as a spiritual practice. And as you are doing right now, you are participating in the beloved community as a kind of spiritual practice. And getting back to my original statement, yeah, you're doing this because you want to feel better about someone or something or some aspect of your life. So one of the practices that Reverend Marie Kirkland suggests in relation to today's theme of rise and reemerge is to journal. So I just wanted to speak a couple of words about journaling. And in particular, she suggests doing some sort of gratitude journal. Okay, make a list on a regular basis for what you are grateful, for what you are thankful. Now, when anyone makes that conscious choice to be grateful, to be appreciative, to be thankful, there are immediate changes in your thinking. You're actually accessing different parts of your brain that aren't accessed really any other way. You're bringing to life the mind, meaning that whole physical sensation of the quality of gratitude, or the quality of appreciation. And along with it then becomes a flow of emotion. So really a lot changes when a person is genuinely in that grateful poise. Now, it's a couple of things to be mindful of around journaling. One of them is a two-parter. And so I'm a little bit challenged by this myself. And that is to journal down a rabbit hole, right? To journal into, really deep down into some challenge, or to really dissect something not working that well in my life. I have been known to do that. And so I'm very careful and mindful about my journaling practice to just use those to bring me back to the opposite of that challenge, which would be some spiritual truth or quality that I am as yet not fully embodying, I'm not fully experiencing. But along those lines, people, and I hear this quite frequently, that there is some hurt or harm that has befallen them. They have been wounded in some way. Forget about what the proximal cause of that wound or harm or hurt might be. But they will give great gratitude for that occurrence, right? And really the grateful part of that experience is for the healing, not the hurt, right? So there might be some hurt, wound in your life. And what you are grateful for is the ability to heal, the ability to recover, the ability to grow from that experience. Because we say, what you appreciate appreciates. Gratitude is the anointing of increase. So if you're really grateful for harm and hurt in your life, you might be saying, I want more harm and wound and hurt in my life, right? You don't want that, but you do want the healing. So the healing is the thing to be grateful for. The other thing that folks often do in journaling is that they will be thankful for what they feel is God's favor for them. Now, in the science of mind of spirit, the ever-presence, the all-loving, all-knowing, all-caring nature of spirit does not play favorites, right? You and I and everything is filled to overflowing with God's good graces. So get that. You are filled to overflowing with God's good graces. So it is your conscious awareness and circulation of that infinite and indwelling presence and power, and also that which surrounds you. That's the part to be grateful for. And therefore, what you're doing by being conscious of those blessings in your life is to say, this is me participating more greatly in the flow of God's good. That good is already so about me. That good is already true about me. And I'm just bringing that more into the experience and the expression of my life. And for that, I am grateful. Now, we've heard this expression, where attention goes, energy flows. And of course, the add on to that, because that comes from the Huna tradition, results show. And in the New Thought world, we have added or changed this to say where intention goes, energy flows, and results show. Well, what is it that it is actually going to show up where your attention or intention ends up? Well, these will be more prominent in your life. These are the qualities, the feelings, those inward positive sensations that are a direct connection, an answer to any prayer or affirmation, is to feel more beauty, or to feel more peace, or to feel more freedom, or to feel more generosity, to feel more harmony in one's life. That is what the attention to, and therefore the intention behind it, where the energy flows and the result is you experience more of God's good in these human forms as a result of that practice and those principles. Now, I have often shared with you that, the Science of Mind teaching, there's kind of a bumper sticker that goes around that Science of Mind and Spirit is a teaching, a philosophy, and a way of life. And I have found for me, and I've studied other traditions as well over the years, either after I had become immersed in Science of Mind or prior to coming to Science of Mind, And I can tell you that this teaching for me is really full and complete. You know, I have found it to address every aspect of my spiritual journey. And thankfully, Ernest Holmes, the founder of The Science of Mind and the author of the textbook, The Science of Mind and Spirit, was truly prolific. And he was a scholar of other faith traditions. And he also knew that his work was only scratching the surface. So he declared the teaching to be what he called open at the top. And part of that means that future generations, like you and I, are invited to expand on the Science of Mind teaching. Now, again, there's a line of distinction here, and that doesn't mean that we sort of hybridize or fuse this teaching with other teachings or philosophies, but it means expanding the Science of Mind to create new material based on this kind of other bumper sticker, change your thinking, change your life. And the science aspect of it, right? So the science part of the Science of Mind means two things. It means applying a scientific method, pardon me. It means applying the scientific method through spiritual practices, as we've already mentioned, to your spiritual evolution, on your spiritual journey. And it also means that body of of evidence and data, you know, what we might know as a testimonial experience. And again, those testimonials are fantastic when shared, but they are personal too. So I have a set of testimonies about the emergence of spirit in my life that mean a lot to me, and I can share those with you, and they might mean something to you, but yours mean as much or more to yourself. And that's part of where that journaling practice, and particularly a gratitude journal, comes into play, to recognize, you know, where you are, how far you've come, and where you're going, right? From what you are rising and emerging from to what you are rising and emerging to, right? The other thing about this teaching that is, you know, is really a couple of things that are important to me to understand, and what attracts me and keeps me engaged in this teaching, is that this is a teaching of spiritual self-empowerment, right? Ernest Holmes and others have given us some basic practices, some tried and true scientific methods of those spiritual practices, so that we can prove to ourselves, so I can prove to myself and you can prove to yourself, you know, what is spiritually true, right? The Science of Mind and Spirit doesn't even require that you have some belief in God, right? It doesn't require you to swear a creed. It doesn't seem to be much any sort of dogma, right? The Science of Mind says you practice these principles and you will naturally feel and sense and intuit a force for good that indwells and surrounds you and creates and circulates all that is, right? So to me, that says a lot about the Science of Mind teaching. So we have this quote from Ernest Holmes that says, "There is something within you that sings the song of eternity. Listen to it." You know, the force for good is the bigger self. It is the one power, the presence, the intelligence, the compassion. And that is what you are growing in your conscious awareness. It's already within you, right? But it is something that you are experiencing and expressing more of. And it's something that you live more fully, because at your essence, you are that big self. You are pure spirit. So your acts of spiritual self-empowerment bring about that rise and reemergence of that big self, that God self within you and that surrounds you. Now, the other thing I've said about the Science of Mind and Spirit is it is a teaching of liberation, right? I can honestly say that I am lighter and freer today than I was yesterday, than I was last week, last month, last year, last decade, right? I have been freed in ways I never even knew I was not free, right? And once I began this process, this sort of procession of, in particular, dedicated spiritual practice, right, I began to notice other ways in which I can be free. So Michael Beckwith says, spiritual awakening is a journey of the heart. Every person's heart is a flame to know its true nature, to commune with its source, right? As I had mentioned, the spiritual practices individually, and as we gather together, joining together in spiritual practice or your set of spiritual practices, they set up a certain course that inevitably leads to firing your heart and setting you free. So even when those spiritual practices do not seem to have much of an effect, they are moments that build momentum. So this comes back to what we had said earlier, those moments, and we create those moments consciously through spiritual practices. That is what builds momentum. Now, I have mentioned before, and I will mention again, that forgiveness is a key to liberation, to freeing oneself from perceived hurts or harms, right? And we talk about forgiveness like everybody automatically knows how to forgive. But I have shared with you before this A Course in Miracles practice called atonement. So what I thought I would do today is share with you the how-to, right? And I've talked about it before, but I made up a little slide that might help you along to sort of to capsulize this process. So here we are, how to forgive. And the process in A Course in Miracles is called atonement. And a lot of folks in New Thought want to break that down to at 1 minute. So the first part of this process, I didn't put on here, but you have to have this commitment. You have to have this intention. You have to pay attention to forgiving. And again, I can tell you that I would be a person that resisted it, meaning it felt easier, it was more familiar to not forgive and not forget, not do any of that. And that forgiveness work, that looked pretty ugly. Yeah, that could be a big challenge for me. That's kind of messy. So I'll just stick with my resentment and let it eat me alive inside rather than do something to heal myself and move forward. So again, it begins with that conscious intention to forgive. Once you want to do that, then here is a suggested process. There are others. I happen to like this one, right? First thing you're going to do is recall that occurrence that you think led to that hurt or harm, right? Whatever it might be. And as you recall that occurrence, and an aside here, this might be something that you work with your practitioner around, because as I mentioned earlier, for me, it was so unappealing that I chose not to do it. And some very accomplished and effective practitioners are ones that helped me through my process. First of all, to forgive, right, to set the intention, and then to do something about it, to engage in a process that was actually leading to forgiveness, right? So recall each occurrence one by one. Try not to lump them together because that will make it overwhelming. But one by one individually, stay with that and notice everything about this moment. What's going on, especially what's going on in your thinking, what's going on in your emotional being, what's going on in your intuitive being. And then notice an instant in that occurrence where you made an unloving choice, right? And it would be natural if somebody's not a super elevated consciousness, if in a contentious occurrence, a contentious situation where you're feeling attacked, that you would go into a protective mode, right? It wouldn't seem all that loving. But that protective mode can be a loving choice. So I just want to filter this a little bit. It's where you're making a conscious, unloving choice based on something you're doing or thinking or saying, not necessarily in reaction to the threats of the moment to your well-being or your psyche or both, right? But notice that moment that you may have made an unloving choice. And now you're going to remake that choice somehow, some way, and it might be just a small shift at first, but you're going to remake that choice in a constructive and positive way that's opposite that unloving choice. So it might just be, hey, I was feeling attacked, so I went into protection mode. That's a loving choice, and that might be the first point at which you work on this particular occurring, forgiving this particular occurrence, right? But then you might go on to say, well, if I was feeling now safe and protected in that occurrence, what might be a further loving choice I could make, right? That is opposite the unloving choices that are going on in my thinking and in my being. And as you just dwell on remaking that choice, you're going to notice any negativity beginning to shift, right? You're going to feel things lightening up at least just a little bit in moving in the direction to positivity. And as always is the exhortation around forgiveness, repeat and repeat and repeat, right? Until you get to a point where you are just free completely from this particular occurrence. And once you're free from that particular occurrence, the need, the want, desire for forgiveness disappears, right? It is forgiven. It's not necessarily forgotten, but the healing is well on its way. You're no longer weighed down by this particular occurrence. And for that reason, there is a liberation taking place in your heart and mind. So I'll leave you today with this affirmation: fully nourished, restored, and renewed, now I rise. Fully nourished, restored, and renewed, now I rise. Well, peace and blessings, everyone. Thank you so much for being here and sharing this time together. Well, thank you so much. I just want to remind you, we'll be enjoying fellowship together after our closing song. And the prayer of the practitioner, what we know as Minute Miracles, are available. I think we have a few, well, in addition to Gary, I'm just trying to look down my list right now to see if we have any other. Irma is here. And
Your mom and dad.
but you're not a practitioner, so anyway. But anyway, prayer of the practitioner is available after service. And we'll close by singing our closing prayer. And
before we do, I want to just say one thing. You know, when you give the message and you have to MC at the same time, that's a tricky thing. And I just want to acknowledge Reverend Kevin for being the electronic genius behind all of this stuff. You know, every time you see words for the song come up, every time you hear the music, and we switch back and forth, and he's doing all that at the same time he's trying to give the message. So I'd like to see a little love and support for Rev Kev this morning.
Well, thank you, Gary. I appreciate that. Yeah, I'm getting used. I can spin 3 or 4 plates now. So, and most of them aren't crashing down. So, anyway, all right. So let's sing our closing prayer together.
This is our prayer, a song of peace. We get to be the change we want to see. With open hearts and open hands, we lift our voices, in love we stand. This is our prayer, a song of peace. We get to be the change we want to see. With open hearts and open hands, we lift our voices, in love we stand. This is our prayer, a song of peace. We get to be the change we want to see. With open hearts and open hands, we lift our voices, in love we stand. We lift our voices, in love we stand. We lift our voices, in love we stand.
Well, have a wonderful week, everyone. Stick around and join us for fellowship. And say goodbye to our live streamers. Thank you for joining us.